Okay, hello everyone. We're back again. So this week we're talking about another film, science related, sci-fi related. So First Man, which is a biopic of Neil Armstrong. um, not the asshole biker guy.
Yeah, we don't like him.
Yeah, we don't like it. All right, so yeah, how was your week? Did you watch anything interesting? Did you do anything interesting?
Well, I watched First Man, which was really good. I rewatched a documentary called Pick of the Litter, which is one of the most wholesome documentaries because it's about the. So you start from the birth of the puppies because it is about dogs.
Oh,
It's basically about dogs that are bred for people who are blind and
oh,
their journey, and it's absolutely beautiful. You're rooting
yeah,
for every single one of the puppies to make it to the end of their training. The amount of training that goes in just within 16 months is absolutely amazing. Like these dogs
hmm,
are going 24/7, and they go from a foster family to their next trainer to their next trainer. And if they don't make it to being a dog for the blind, they can be put into different areas, like maybe
yeah,
someone with epilepsy or someone with diabetes or people who can see but still can't be left alone. It's really wonderful and wholesome. And again, you're rooting for every dog, and it's really
yeah.
if you just
That
want something
sounds,
simple.
that sounds like really positive.
It
Like,
is like, and it's so beautiful, really. Like the
yeah,
people who train these dogs, immediately once the dog gets homed, they go right back and get another dog to foster. Like these people live and breathe training these dogs, and
mhm,
it's like I wish I could do something like that. Like that's like
yeah,
it's so rewarding.
yeah. That sounds like if you just need something positive to like uplift you.
Exactly.
um, yeah. So this week I was on a trip in Las Vegas. And so while I was there, I saw two films. I saw The New Mutants, and I got to see Tenet,
Mm,
actually. So I did see Tenet, which was interesting. Um, it, well, let's just put it this way: the action was really good. There was a lot of stuff where you couldn't really understand the plot.
of
Like
course.
it was very convoluted, and I remember there were complaints about this with like the Dark Knight Rises. So like they released this the first like 10 minutes or whatever, and the first version of that, no one could understand Bane at all. I mean, it was just like that's what it sounded like. And this kind of had a similar problem where people would be talking, but they'd be wearing a mask or something, and then there'd be really loud music, and you're like, "What did they just say?" And so there was a lot of like stuff with the plot, which was a little like confusing or convoluted, or I don't know, just too complex for its own good.
Mm,
And like some of the characters were like really flat. Like the characters, he's already been accused of like having his characters exist solely to, just to speak exposition. Like in Inception, there's a whole character, the Joseph Gordon-Levitt character. He basically just does exposition like the whole movie.
over a montage,
Yeah,
generally.
yeah. It's like a montage of him and some other character, like him and
Alan Page, usually.
yeah, yeah, him and Ellen Page, and then it's like, let me show you how this concept works.
I
and,
don't like that movie for that. That's one of the reasons.
yeah, I mean that because like there's so much that you just have to like kind of put in. I feel like that film, I feel like Inception did a better job than Tenet did. With Tenet, it was like if there was exposition, it was like you couldn't understand it because there was a bunch of other stuff going on, or it just kind of wasn't there, and you were just a little confused.
Hmm.
But I think overall the film was not terrible. I mean, when you spend $200 million on a movie, it's hard to make
It's better
something
not
that's
to be
bad.
bad.
I do think it's worth seeing in for like in a theater and a theatrical experience. I don't think people need to like rush out there and you know go if you feel like it's not safe.
That's the thing
Um,
too. Like just what you were saying about the loud noises and like the muffled dialogue. I'm kind of over him using the same noise. Um, like I was watching Inception with earbuds in, and I'm like, okay, I'm taking these out because I need to be able to hear something. Like, my ears were ringing, and I'm like, I know he likes that noise, and it's a director's trademark thing that they have to have. But can we stop?
Yeah, there were parts of of that film where my girlfriend literally was like this, like it was just too loud.
It's just such, like, why?
Yeah.
Why? It's fine, but okay.
There's this one scene that's really, really well done where they use this like massive practical effect. But I mean, I've never heard a louder score cue than in that moment. It was like overwhelmingly loud. I mean, it did kind of make the moment, kind of a little bit bigger, but you're just like, whoa, you're just throwing sound and things at me.
And I guess part of it is maybe to like immerse you more into the film, like you're actually a part of this kind of a thing. But I can be a part of a movie, like that much noise will take me out, in my opinion, like because I'm focused on the pain and ringing in my ears and not on the film that I'm supposed to be enjoying. I'm starting to worry Nolan's now being surrounded by yes men who won't tell him something's bad. I think he's gotten to that point.
Yeah.
But he's not a bad filmmaker either. I won't say he's bad.
I think Tenet is the classic example of people saying yes. And to give you a reason, like there's a whole bunch of things that sort of happen in this film that if you or me wrote this same script and then like handed it to someone and it had our name and not his name, people would reject it, be like, okay, the concepts are interesting, but like there's a whole bunch of problems here that need to be fixed.
It's kind of how I feel with like J.K. Rowling's Fantastic Beasts movie. She wrote the screenplay. It comes from her heart, and I'm like, those, in my opinion, movies are shit.
They are shit.
There's not a single likable character. Newt Scamander Rander, whatever his name is a irresponsible moron. And the few good ideas that are in there are mostly related to the bad guys who, in my opinion, I should be rooting for, and not Newt Scamander, who is literally just a troublemaker and should be thrown in Azkaban prison for endangering the lives of mortals. He's kind of a bad person. But he's cute, and he's shy, and kind of has that Benedict Cumberbatch Sherlock thing going, but in a nicer way. So we're going to give him a pass. Like, Dumbledore is a villain. Like, he's a villain through and through. He picks people who are irresponsible.
Yeah. The thing about those movies, too, that's messed up is, like, those movies happened because the studio begged her to do more movies. And so she's like, here you go.
I'll just crap one out over the weekend. Here you go. It's like, and nobody says no to her. And
yeah. Because it's the...
Oh, go ahead.
It's their golden goose, and they're just like, we made $1 billion. And this is the same thing that happened with The Hobbit. Like, The Hobbit is 3 movies because some studio executive was like, why don't we make 3 movies?
But a trilogy worked before.
Yeah, and he said sure, because like, the thing about it too in the film industry, it's very hard to make any film, right? And so when someone's offering to allow you to make 3 films, it's hard to say no, despite the fact that creatively that's probably not going to be the best thing for the film. Like if The Hobbit was like, a 2.5 hour, maybe 3 hour one film, would have been great.
Yeah, I was going to say, if it had just been a 3-hour-long movie, Peter Jackson could have made his director's cut, and people still would have bought it and enjoyed it. Like, the director's cut of Lord of the Rings is my favorite version. It still would have been an enjoyable film. Would it have been great? Probably not, but it would have been enjoyable, and you still would have made bank on it. But it's just, I feel like Peter Jackson probably almost died making those movies because he was like, how can I squeeze this much out of how long is The Hobbit? Like 100 pages? Not even.
Yeah. Totally. And they're just grabbing stuff.
Well, this guy was mentioned in a paragraph one time.
Yeah.
So we're going to give him 30 minutes of screen time. Like everybody got 30 minutes of screen time who was mentioned once in the book. And that adds up really fast.
Yeah. And it doesn't work. It doesn't, the film doesn't work. Like, The Lord of the Rings is incredible. The Hobbit, you're like, what?
Yeah.
You know?
I think it just, there weren't enough characters in The Hobbit for me to care about either. Like, you grow attached to the characters in The Hobbit, in Lord of the Rings very quickly and very easily. But The Hobbit was just,
Yeah, I don't know. What's funny too, like The Hobbit, there's some really clear things that are connective to The Lord of the Rings that should make you instantly care, right? Like, there's all these characters that are related, like, to Gimli. I think it's like Gimli's dad, and then like his uncle.
Yep.
And those people appear later they don't appear later, but like in the Mines of Moria scene, they go to the Mines of Moria, and the uncle's dead. And, there's some other stuff where, what's his name talks about, like, oh yeah, and he basically references their adventures with the people from The Hobbit, like the yeah, and so that would be like, that's I feel like the whole reason to make the film is like, oh yeah, by the way, you remember like when Gimli got really mad when he saw his uncle dead? Well, here's the uncle.
Yeah, but I don't care about him.
Exactly.
Like, I don't care about him. I cared more about his corpse than in the first Lord of the Rings movie than I cared about him as a character, because at that point you have 9 people in the Fellowship at the start of the Fellowship of the Ring that I love every single one of them in their own unique way. Whether it's Legolas's heroism, Gimli's, crotchetiness, or Boromir's redemption arc. I love all of them in their own way. There's too many fat, stupid dwarfs that I don't care about.
Yeah.
And one leader dwarf who learns one thing at the end of every movie, and at the end of the first 2 movies, by movie 3, he has forgotten everything he has learned. It's like they just erased all of the things that Bilbo does for him and sacrifices for him. He's a shitty leader, and I don't care that he dies.
Yeah. Because like at the what was it, Desolation of Smaug at the beginning, like you said, they just reverse everything. Like before, he had sort of gone on a positive change, and then he's like, "Oh, gold! I'm greedy now."
No, you're just a weak ass fuckboy. That's what you are.
Yeah, it's just like, okay, fuck this shit. I don't care anymore.
Yeah, you're not Aragorn, bro, and you never will be Aragorn. And I love that actor. I love Richard Armitage. Like, totally dig him, but you're not Aragorn.
Yeah, no, you're not at all.
You're not my ranger, bro.
Yeah, I don't know. The Hobbit is definitely a sad missed opportunity. But I feel like the Hobbit just shows you never know with the film. You never really know if it's gonna work, right? You would think, same director, made these other brilliant films, great source material. This should be an awesome film. And then what the fuck do we get?
I will say there are some good moments in it. I love everything with the necromancer. I love the way it looks. I love that Cumberbatch did like 8 million voices again.
Yeah.
He was good as Smaug. I will say that. Smaug was pretty intimidating. I'm glad that they sized, that thing was massive, the way that they made him look, and it was brilliant. My favorite scene in any of the movies is the showdown with Galadriel. I think Gandalf's there because she's coming to save Gandalf. What's his name? Mr. Smith.
Hugo Weaving too. Yeah.
Weaving.
The other Lord Elrond.
Elrond, yeah, and Sauron.
Yeah, Elrond, yeah.
Or Sauron. Which one is it?
It's probably Sauron. Yeah.
But they have that showdown with the ring wraiths or the ghost people or whatever. That's my favorite scene, when Galadriel shows like just how powerful she really is.
Yeah.
And that's an intense, awesome fight, and I love it. Because Elrond never got to swing that sword nearly enough, in my opinion.
Yeah,
He's
for
a
sure.
badass. You know it.
Yeah. I mean, he's an immortal elf. Lord. Yeah.
Get out of here, Thranduil, with your stupid freaking wig and your
Yeah.
stupid crown. Like, Elrond's the shit.
Yeah. Hopefully, maybe at some point, like, there was some news recently that Francis Ford Coppola was going to do another version of Godfather III. He was going to do he's going to do a director's cut.
Just when I think I'm out, they
pulled me. Exactly. He could never get away from it.
I actually don't mind the third Godfather movie. It just does no idea what it wants to be. It doesn't know if it's a gangster movie. There's religion in it. There's all these things going on, and it has there's weird incest as well, which no one ever talks about. No one ever talks about the incest. And it's just a movie that no idea what it is. It's which I guess is true of the time and the story itself. Like, the mafia is changing. Woo. Mm-hmm. We don't know where we fit in this crazy modern world. But yeah, I don't hate it, but I don't love it either.
Yeah, that film, like, to me, the problem with that film is, like, so it starts off with like a voiceover, which is not in any of the other films at all. And so it's already like off to a bad start. And then there's just like, I don't know, the characters just don't feel like he's really great at casting. Like, he's one of the best, like, at casting ever. Like, all of his films, he always gets people that become great actors. I almost feel like he's never cast someone and it's like, oh, well, no, he casts great actors.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like, something about it just didn't work. Like, the acting didn't work, and it didn't have that Godfather feel.
Yeah, Al Pacino looked tired, which I guess Michael is probably sick of everything at that point. So, but he looked tired of being there, tired of being this character. Maybe, actors, I'm sure, get really sick of being like, hey, it's Michael Corleone or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, my mom and her sister once followed Al Pacino into a department store in New York City in the 70s. Like, they did
in the 70s?
Yes.
Oh, that's totally different. I kind of think that's justified. No, I'm kidding.
But my mom was like, he's so tiny.
Yeah, he's especially back then.
Oh yeah, but yeah, they followed him into a department store because they had seen The Godfather and they thought he was just like super hot shit.
Oh yeah, he was huge at that time. For sure.
But yeah, I think the casting wasn't bad in it either. Who was it? Andy Garcia plays
Andy Garcia's
son.
Again, that's a perfect casting. That's a perfect casting.
Yeah. And you see a lot of like the Sonny character. I think Michael even has a line when I don't remember the character's name, but when Andy Garcia's character loses his temper, I think he bites someone or something. He's like, "Yep, that's Sonny's kid."
Yeah. Yeah. That was good. Yeah, there's basically the villain of the film. And yeah, Andy Garcia's like, dude, this guy talks shit behind your back, blah blah blah.
I'm gonna bite him.
And and then Michael's like, no, Well, Michael asks the guy like, do you is this true? And the guy's like, oh no, he lies, of course. And then he's like, okay, you need to make up with him, and that's when he bites him or whatever.
Doesn't make up. No.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna bite him.
I'm going to bite him in his stupid face. I think that same year, or closely near that same year, Andy Garcia had been in the Untouchables, too. So he was kind of blowing up around that same time. I love the Untouchables. It made me fall in love with tense elevator scenes. I love that movie. Yeah,
that movie, I feel like I should like it more than I do. I really, really want to like that movie, but there's something about it that doesn't stick for me.
Probably because I don't know why. Lie about Elliot Ness. He was a terrible person in real life. Yeah. It's not an accurate depiction of anyone at all. But I don't necessarily always like gangster crime movies. It's one of my favorites. I personally really like it, even though it's a lie.
Yeah, I mean, I'm cool with them like kind of doing their own thing because to me it's like some fantastical stuff. Exactly. I mean, again, that's another film where the cast is amazing, right?
Yes.
The cast is amazing. Yeah, I don't know. It just I felt like it tried to play things both ways. It tried to be both very kind of serious and dark and bloody and gruesome, but also kind of too fun and goofy and cutesy. Mm-hmm. Like there's a scene where they kind of have to do a mission where they there's some people running liquor and they stop them, and that scene kind of, they played it almost like an adventure or something.
Yeah, kind of like, I think they're on horses at one point.
Yeah.
Like, it's almost like it has like a Western vibe to it, because there's a train, I think, too. Also,
yeah.
Sean Connery blowing the brains out of an already dead man is kind of morbid, too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That just like, juxtaposing that with, like, the scene where like, he beats the guy in the head with the bat, where Al Capone beats the guy in the head with the bat, that just doesn't sit well with, like, you got to choose one or the other. Mm-hmm. And if you choose, I would prefer that they choose the bloody route the whole way, where it's like, this is real stuff. We're trying to do it kind of like The Godfather, where that film does not pull punches. Like, when people die, they die, and it's gruesome. So yeah, I don't know. Some of this stuff didn't totally work for me. But yeah, I mean, the cast is great, and I don't know, it's just like, I feel like on paper that film was like a film that should be amazing. Mm-hmm. But I don't know, it just fell a little bit short for me. Yeah. So yeah, long story short, Tenet, kind kind of really loud. Tenet's one of those films, like, if that film doesn't work and he made like 2 more Tenets in a row, he might be making Batman 4 or whatever.
He might have to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah. It was funny. Recently he said, "Oh, I think my DC days are done." I'm like, dude, if you make 2 more Tenets, you will be back. You'll be back to DC.
You will have no choice.
Yeah, you will have no choice. So you better be careful.
So maybe direct someone else. Did he write it? Did he write it?
He did, yeah. He did.
So maybe direct something somebody else has written. Is what I'm.
Yeah, I think that might be part of the problem, because now that I think about it, a lot of the films that he does that are good, or at least the ones I like, a lot of it he worked with his brother, actually. And so I think his brother is actually the one who's a good writer.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with someone being a good writer, and you can bring that good writing to life in a really beautiful way.
Yeah.
Maybe let because I feel like sometimes directors are only like, I only want to write I only want to direct what I write. I only want to make what I write, because it's my vision, it's my creation. We've all heard stories about egomaniac directors who only want their vision. But I think it's okay to allow someone else their vision, and you can give it life. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And although we wouldn't have Ellie, stop licking your toes. Sorry. We wouldn't have some of our greatest, films without a couple of egomaniacs out there.
Yeah, totally.
I see you. Stop it. Or you're going on the floor. Sorry, I had to be a mother for a second.
It's okay. Yeah, it's all good. Yeah, because like Memento was written by his brother. I think The Prestige, they wrote that together. I think the Batman movies, both of them were involved. Interstellar was actually going to be directed by Spielberg, and then sort of late in the game, Nolan came into it. And let me see, Prestige, I think as well, was written basically by the two of them. So I think when he's on his own, might be a problem, because they've kind of gone in different directions. Like the brother is now he's like the head writer for and creator of Westworld, and that's kind of his thing. Him and his wife. So I don't know. I think he should get back together with his brother for the next movie.
I think they should too. Otherwise, you're going to be knocking on Warner Brothers' door really fast.
Yeah, and they're freaking bending over backwards for this guy. It's like crazy. It's crazy. Well, anyway, okay. Now we're going to talk about First Man, this biopic of Neil Armstrong. So, yeah, this was a really interesting film. I definitely liked a lot of it. It kind of, the concept and the way that they shot it alone kind of reminded me. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Right Stuff. Yeah.
It's
reminded me a lot of that.
But it's it brought me right back to those feelings I had watching it because my dad loves The Right Stuff, and I grew up watching Apollo 13. Pardon me. So yeah, I was definitely all about that shit.
Yeah, so this film, it feels a little similar, right? Because it's like, but this focuses on one person, whereas that kind of focused on the team.
Yeah, it was more of an ensemble.
Mm-hmm. And that film's like really epic. It's like 3 hours long. So
it's a very long movie.
Yeah, it's really long.
This movie made me want to go back and watch Apollo 13 and The Right Stuff because they're just such harrowing stories. They really are.
Yeah. I also recently saw Hidden Figures, which is another film kind of in a similar vein.
Oh yeah, I've been meaning to watch that.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. I would definitely recommend it. So this is about Neil Armstrong. In the beginning is like, again, like The Right Stuff kind of, he's a engineer, pilot, and he's doing, all these tests and stuff like that. And one of the tests goes not great. Yeah, it doesn't go great. And so it kind of, gets him into hot water with the company he's working for. But it's so this film constantly juxtaposes his work with his personal life and his family life, and how tumultuous really his personal life was. There's a lot of stuff that, like, a lot of death, basically.
Yeah, a lot of like guilt, probably, on top of losing his daughter at such a young age in such a terrible way. Like, he has that to deal with because, like, the death of a child can really tear apart a marriage. So you see why that's such...
Yeah.
He almost seems to be distancing himself. Like, because you see him interact with his kids. He's like a dad. He does dad stuff that I remember my dad doing. One of my favorite moments is when he picks up his son. He's going to put him in the freezer. Like, I remember my dad picked me up and was like, hey, I'm going to throw you out the window now. And he'd be like giggling and laughing. No, Dad. So that was really sweet. But it almost does seem like he tries to distance himself. Like, I think most times when his sons come and ask him to play, he doesn't.
Yeah.
But
yeah, just because he kind of knows that the life that he's leading, it's very dangerous, and if he gets too attached, maybe one day he's just not going to come back, and that might devastate them. And his wife is kind of tortured by all of this, right? Like, she people talk a lot about like emotional labor, and she does a lot of emotional labor in this film, and it's intense, right?
Yeah, on top of like being a mother and raising two sons, like that scene when she's listening to the chatterbox or whatever.
Yeah.
On top of her kids just like, mommy, or like doing all these other things.
Yeah.
I love when she's sitting on the bed with her son and he's like, and I've organized everything, and now it's here, and now it's there, and he just kind of throws something and rolls over, and she's like, what the fuck?
Yeah. And
like, they don't realize that why she's so tense and why she's on such a hair trigger, and it's just, you can't tell your little kids that. Like, well, your dad's in space right now and might die, so I'm a little distraught.
Yeah. I really like that scene. Like, she's listening to the, I guess it's like a public broadcast of
I wasn't
what was
sure
happening.
If it's just being broadcast for the wives or families, or if it's all over. I would imagine it's probably all over.
Yeah.
Unless it's that private or secret or something like that. But but it was fantastic. Yeah,
she was. Like, they put a lot on her shoulders in this film, and she pulled it off. Like, that scene was really good. Like, she's listening, and then the son's like taking the radio away and stuff. He's like, "Oh, I got it.
Give it back." Like, little kids just don't know. They just want to play with someone. Like,
they have no idea. Yeah.
And that's what is so sad about it. At the same time, is that they just don't know. You have to almost appreciate that naivety. You almost wish you were that naive too. But
yeah, where you just all you care about is like having fun and enjoying your life. None of the adult stuff kind of gets in your way.
No, because Dad will be home eventually. He'll be home eventually.
Yeah, he always comes home, right?
Yeah, their dad always comes home.
Yeah. Yeah, so, and then, like, another part of the film, so, you know, he applies, so, like, his daughter dies, there's this funeral, which is pretty difficult for him, and there's another scene during that where, like you said, he doesn't play with his kids really, or doesn't really he kind of tries to be standoffish, and so this is, like, the early 60s, and there's like a scene where his son's like, "Hey, daddy, come outside and play with me." It's like, "No, I can't play with you. I have to be with your mom." And she's, you know, again, really distraught by this whole thing. And so then he sort of just applies to NASA, right? He like sees this magazine. Yeah, you just see like, how can I take my mind off of this? Let me apply to NASA.
Yeah, I'll just go and do that for a while.
Yeah, this will help, and then we'll move to Houston. So he does, and of course, as we know, he gets the job, and so they have to move to Houston to take this job. And there's some scenes where, like, you know, I guess they basically live in like the NASA neighborhood, right?
Yeah, that was like a real thing. Like they would create army neighborhoods near where I'm staying right now. There's dozens of them that have been reconverted into just your normal homes for anybody. But back in the 40s and 50s, they were all military families lived there.
Yeah.
They're all cookie cutter houses, all look very much the same, you know, same kind of lawns, backyards, stuff like that. So that was an incredibly common thing because it was just probably easier to keep them all in one place. And that way your wives can mingle and you can make a community and all that other stuff. So that was a nice touch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so their neighbor is another basically hopeful astronaut, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the two wives, they become friends and they have kids that are like the same age. So, you know, they start to get closer, which is, we're gonna see some, again, death just surrounds these people, unfortunately. And that's kind of what I think this film does a good job of showing, is like there was a human cost to all these things that we did beyond just the monetary costs. And people, not only did people die, but people had an emotional burden put on them in order for us to succeed in doing this thing. Because it's very stressful when you never know if you're going to make it or not, right?
Yeah.
And some people, like the neighbor, like she kind of seemed like she didn't really think what could happen. What does happen could happen, right?
Exactly. No, I don't think she was necessarily naive about it, but I think she got comfortable because Ed White was always coming home, just like Neil Armstrong was always coming home, or all the other guys before that who passed away. Like there was two other guys before we even get to the accident that die in a plane crash. They weren't even in space. They just died in a plane crash.
In a plane,
Yep. And there's a scene when they're driving home from one of the funerals where, you know, Claire Foy's character is just like, we got used to funerals a long time ago, but we haven't been to one in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very ominous because of what happens later in the movie and who she's saying it to.
Yeah.
It's very, because it doesn't really seem like Ed and his wife have thought too much about it or have experienced this all that much. And, you know, this is a time period where still men aren't showing emotions, men aren't supposed to be vulnerable or anything like that. And it really feels like, whether it's true in real life or not, Ed was really trying to get through to Neil to still be present and be a dad.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to talk about your daughter, that's fine. I'm here for you, kind of a thing. And that door kind of closes, I feel like.
Yeah, I really like that scene you were talking about where she talks about they went to like 4 funerals for pilots in like, I think a year, they said?
Yeah.
That's crazy when you see 4 people die. And at that point, you kind of have to think it's just like a roll of the dice, right?
Yeah, again,
like,
it goes back to such a miracle he made it as far as he did. And I think he has a lot of survivor's guilt. A lot.
Yeah. I mean, you would have to. When you see all these brilliant people, brilliant, brave, like incredible people, and they're dead.
Yep. And young, too. I'm sure a lot of these guys are played by actors who are probably in their late 30s, early 40s, but I'd be curious to know just how old they were in real life. Especially some of the other characters later on, because who is it? One of the guys, I can't remember his name, but he's I think his last name is Schreiber. He's playing Jim Lovell, and I didn't know that until I read the IMDb page of who he was playing. Just imagine like how he must have felt like watching all this too, like, and then eventually what happens to him with Apollo 13. Like,
right,
kind of crazy, because you're like, once you realize who he's playing, you're like, oh, buddy, like you're in for a world of hurt in a few years too.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, exactly. Yep. Space is a dangerous place for humans.
It's just as terrifying as the sea for me, or the water, because it's so unknown. I mean, I think we know more about space than we do about our own oceans, but it's still I love the silence that they included in that, because a lot of times in like Star Trek or Star Wars or stuff like that, you're hearing like the explosions and blah, 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 but it's a vacuum. You wouldn't hear anything. And I thought that was a very nice touch. When there would be explosions, you're just seeing it happen. You kind of have to imagine it. I thought that was very well done. It seemed like a fairly scientifically accurate film, in my opinion.
Yeah, it did. They definitely tried the more hard sci-fi route, right? They wanted to really replicate exactly what the experience was like. And, we'll get into some of the scenes later with some of the missions that they go on. But, yeah, I think they really did a great job of having an accurate representation of it.
Yep.
So I forget what was the name of the guy, the first guy who dies in a crash, who's like a part of the.
I think his last name was C, S-E-E, but I don't remember what his first name
Elliot.
was.
I think it was Elliot C. Yeah.
Elliot C.
So he dies, and again, there's another funeral, and there's some interesting scenes where I forget, was it Buzz Aldrin or something? I think it was him. Was like question.
Was a dick.
Yeah, he was like
I was wondering in real life if he was such a, because he is saying what everybody's thinking, and there is a time and a place for that. Not at someone's funeral who just died horrifically, and like his wife could be in earshot. These are his friends, like, for God's sakes. And I think there's a scene later where he says something like, "Well, I'm just saying what everybody's thinking," and Neil's maybe don't.
Yeah.
Maybe don't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's very blunt, and he's very blunt throughout the film.
Yeah, if he wasn't a freaking American hero, I would not like him at all.
Well, look, I mean, people don't have to be likable, right?
That's true.
He got to where well, I guess what I'm saying is he got to where he was because he's probably very smart.
Yeah,
and maybe he doesn't really have a filter, but that doesn't make him a perfectly nice, sociable human, right?
Exactly. And people can say the same thing about Neil Armstrong, was that he wasn't very warm and inviting and touchy-feely and stuff like that. He was there to do his job. Like, I like when, they asked Buzz Aldrin is at the press conference, and he's like, yeah, my wife keeps sneaking in little things in my PPK kit or whatever. And they asked Neil Armstrong, what would you take with you? And he's like, more fuel.
Yeah, which is like, when we get to the actual landing on the moon, is actually very prescient. Like, he's not joking. He is not joking when he says that.
No, he's not joking. And that's the thing. That's a moment where I actually kind of appreciated Buzz Aldrin's character, is that he can tell that Neil doesn't want to be there, and that he really just wants to get this mission over with. And Buzz kind of tries to lighten the mood a little bit and get people laughing. And, he's probably not trying to think about everyone else who's died too. He's probably trying to just make light of it because, hey, I could blow up in the atmosphere. We could just not make it. So I think that was his way of trying to make himself and others a little more comfortable. Because at this time, people are protesting. The press thinks it's a bad idea. There have been failed missions. Lives have been lost. The Russians have already beaten us. What's the point?
Yeah, exactly.
So I thought that was actually a pretty good scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you just think about, I don't know if, like, we were probably too young to really, like, experience, like, the Challenger mission
I know I was too
failure.
young. I wasn't born yet. I don't think
Um,
so.
I know my dad kind of talked a bit about it, but what's crazy about that was there were people, like, who were in, like, middle school or even younger who watched that live.
My brothers were watching Sesame Street and they cut in. Yes.
As it was going off, like,
yes, it was blowing up.
God.
My oldest brother's first memory is the Challenger explosion.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
that is crazy.
I did not watch it for a very long time, and then when I went to the Air and Space Museum and I was researching a little bit more about it, like on my own. I was like, well, why did it blow up? What happened? Like, this is a horrible tragedy. You know, I'm from New Hampshire. One of the women on the Challenger was a school teacher. I think she was from Concord. I could be wrong though. Don't quote me on that. So I wanted to know just a little bit more about it, and I did end up watching it. And you don't forget it. And I kind of wish I hadn't. But it wasn't because I thought it was cool or anything like that. I didn't watch it for some sick, morbid curiosity. I felt like I kind of should. It's hard to describe.
Yeah, I mean, it really just shows you there is a cost. And again, that's sort of the theme of this film. There's a cost to this sort of human exploration that we're trying to do.
Exactly.
It's
the same reason I like going to Arlington Cemetery when I go visit my sister. I don't go because it's pretty. I go to give thanks and to appreciate lives that have been lost in various forms of conflict or exploration. And it's utterly moving every time. And the first time I went, there was a funeral happening. Yeah. And we just sat in the car and cried. Because it's one of the most emotional places you will ever visit. Because it goes on for miles and miles. You can't see the whole thing in a single day. Mm-hmm. And actually, my sister's fiance's grandfather's buried at Arlington. So we always go and lay something for him. It's the same reason I go there. Because I feel like I should.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And, you know, these people, like, they do, like, to be an astronaut, you basically have to be an extremely, extremely intelligent person and also extremely physically fit. Like, these are, like, the type of person who is an astronaut is such a almost like peak unique human.
Superhuman.
Yeah, exactly, superhuman.
Like,
and
I was just going to say, like, definitely superhuman. Not only do you have to be incredibly fit and intelligent, you have to have nerves of steel.
Yeah, nerves of steel.
I'm getting chills thinking about it, honestly.
Yeah. So, and that kind of reminds me of, there's this great scene where it's the first, basically like the first class of these NASA astronaut people, and, you know, they basically tell them, okay, these are the things we're going to need to do in order to get to the moon. And so we have to do them sequentially, and we have to be able to do all these things, and then we're going to do the moon landing mission. And so they run them through a bunch of tests. And at the beginning, they have this test where they put you on, basically they're simulating, I don't know what you would call it, but it's like spinning very rapidly. And you have to stabilize it. Despite the fact that a normal person would be knocked out instantaneously. And so Neil gets on the thing and he's trying to stabilize it. He can't, but he's like, okay, yeah, let me keep going. And he does it again, and then there's a scene where he's just throwing up in the bathroom.
Yeah, and there's kind of this moment before him and Ed become friends where, like, the first time he passes out, they're like, okay, Ed, you're up. And Neil's like, no, I can do it. And Ed almost has like, okay, you cocky son of a bitch. And then he throws up right after. Like, they all think they're not going to puke, but you know that they all do.
Yeah, and then there's a great, so they take them from that, and then they put them in this, like, class, right? Where they're like, okay, here's Rocket Science 101. We're going to cover one chapter, which is 605 pages. And what I loved about that scene, there's one guy, he has puke on his shirt. He just threw up, and now he's in class trying to learn. like what?
If this is your 10-hour day in a crash course of being an astronaut, dude. And the thing is, what I love is, like, everybody kind of looks at it like 1 through 602 or something like that, and Neil's just like taking notes. He's like, because he seems like he would be like the nerd one, you know?
Yeah.
Because there's always that quiet, nerdy one he's like the underdog almost, because he's already failed a bunch of times, but then it kind of makes him feel better because other people fail too, and it's okay. And I think he even says that later on, like, we need to fail down here so we don't fail up there. Like, and I like that.
Yeah. There was even, like, when he goes into the first, when he first applies his job, like, there's like offhanded comment like, oh, he's an egghead, you know? So he's got that reputation of being like the really, really intelligent guy.
And on top of that, he's also a civilian. I think it was only 2 people who were civilians who did the moon landing, and it was him and one other guy. And he didn't have any military experience. He was an engineer, but he was just, he was just a civilian. Egghead.
Yeah. Hey, we're the best and brightest, right? So, okay. Then we come to later this really cool scene with the Gemini 8 mission. So this is I think this mission was about, they needed to launch something into space and then have it sort of
dock with the Egomaniac.
Yeah, exactly. So that's their mission. They take off into space. That's successful. Things are going well, and then some crazy stuff happens where the unexpected happens, and they kind of have to do something on the fly, or else they're just going to be dead, right?
This is the scene that made me very dizzy. I got so dizzy watching this scene. Like, when he's in that little contraption earlier in the movie, I'm just like, oh yeah, because especially when it gives you the POV shot. Yeah. But when they're just like going around and around, and you see, I think it's not like a pressure scale or something, but it's like how fast he's spinning per second or something like that. Mm-hmm. And it's like going over the red line. Yeah. And he has to figure out a way to make it stop spinning, and he can't hear anyone. Like, there's all this white noise. Parts of this movie reminded me of almost like a hidden monster type movie, the way it was filmed with all the noises, and you're trapped in this tiny little space. It was very tense, because you're like, I know he makes it to the moon again, but will he actually make it to the moon? Like,
was it really him, or did they just like clone him? Like one of him died?
Fail, and this is actually just like, it is a fake moon landing kind of a thing, because this is freaking me out that he's not going to make it, and the other guy passes out. Yeah. Like, oh my god! Like, again, nerves of steel. Like,
yeah, and if he wasn't able to stabilize the ship, like, they're just dead. They're dead.
Spinning. Like, I would imagine, because when he does stabilize it, he's far enough away. When he detaches from the Egina, that thing's still spinning. So I would imagine that they would have just kept spinning until they were mush. Like, because it's so terrifying.
Right?
So terrifying.
Because exactly, when you're in space, there's no friction. So they probably would have just spun until they re-entered, and they would have just burned into ash. And
just burn up in the atmosphere. Like,
another failed mission, right?
Whoops. And who knows how long they would have kept spinning until that would have all happened. Like, again. Yeah. Like, these people do things that I would never ever do. Like,
like I said, you have to be a certain kind of human to be able to do this stuff. And and that goes right back to that scene we were talking about earlier, where basically their first day they test them, and they do that for a reason, right? Like, you have to be able to withstand that high level of G-force and think on the fly and be able to react and do something, or else you will die. Yep. Space is an evil motherfucker.
It is, and they portray that. They portray that space is not your friend, and that quite frankly, we shouldn't be there. it's not our space, no pun intended, and it's not a safe place to be. And that's why I feel like sometimes it's almost like a creature feature, because you hear these abnormal, horrible, frightening noises that are probably just sounds that the ship is making, but it sounds like a monster. It's like they portray space as a monster.
Yeah, absolutely they do. It's like the villain or something, you know. It's like this entity.
Because there's no one really working against them except they're trying to beat the Russians, which doesn't happen. We lose to the Russians, but they're trying to create this like you said, villain that is just there. It's just floating out there, and we're invading its space.
And it's fighting back.
Nope, I'm going to kick you out. Try again. Do better.
Yeah. So they go into the roll and re-entry, and then he's able to stabilize it, and they're able to get out of it and land safely. Thankfully, thanks to Neil, right? And so on top of that, now after the mission, he gets to deal with all the bureaucrats, right? So now everyone's second guessing what happened to him, and he's in this congressional. It's like a half congressional, half I don't know, some NASA people inquiry, and they're like, "Oh, so why'd you detach? Why'd you do this? Blah blah blah."
It cost so much money.
Yeah, I know.
Well, I was either going to spin and turn into noodles, or I detached. Especially since they're not sure what actually happened. They thought it was the Aegina's computer system. They thought it was the Gemini. They thought it was. They just don't know. There was too many variables, probably.
The other thing too is like, it's hard. Okay, so the technology they were using at the time was like your cell phone. Your cell phone has more computing power than the stuff that they flew into space. Just think about that.
They still made it.
Yeah. So these people were strapped onto nothing. I mean, it's literally like some Wile E. Coyote kind of shit. It's like strap a guy to a rocket and see if he makes it. Yep.
With like so little protection. Like I can imagine it was probably cold in the capsules too. I can imagine that it was not very comfortable. I mean, just the way they filmed it, I can see that it's not a very comfortable space. Like going to the bathroom, like eating, like you were literally strapped to dynamite and hoping. That
that stuff kind of makes me a little claustrophobic. Like those capsules are like hella tiny. I mean, and you're in a spacesuit.
Again, nerves of steel.
That kind of makes me uncomfortable. And then they do these really cool, great shots of like seeing when they get locked in, and you're just like, I'm stuck in this thing. And if something bad happens, like there's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to move.
Your moving space is probably the width of a trash can. Like that's how far you can move your elbows, your arms. You have all of your panels are literally right in front of you, because if they're not, you only have like a few inches to move. Like literally archaic trash can type material. Hope that's just strong enough not to kill you going through the atmosphere. It's just strong enough because at the very beginning of the film, you see the nose of his ship glowing, like, because it's so hot. And you're inside that.
Yeah, you're inside that. Yeah.
No, thank you.
Very scary stuff. But yeah, I thought that the way that they shot the scene was really well done, because like now they're really in space, and that scene, like you said, with when they're spinning, it's really cool the way that they depict space, and it feels and looks very accurate.
Yes.
So I really like that. So after Neil, he has the inquiry, and basically there's another meeting where they're like, hey, you did a good job. We don't know what happened, but who cares? You got out of it.
You're here.
You're here because like if you messed up, you wouldn't be here. You'd be dead. So now we're going to the Apollo mission, which is the next step, getting closer to doing the moon landing. And then there's this really interesting montage where there's a whole bunch of people that like they have a lot of archival footage of people talking about like, oh, is this really justified? Blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
People are poor, and then there's Kurt Vonnegut.
Yep.
Him talking about like, hey, I think I'd rather have a good, be able to live in New York City, because at this point in American history, so a couple things I wanted to talk about was like, this was the most we've ever spent on space exploration in the history of the country, which relatively is actually not a lot, but like NASA's budget peaked in the mid to early 60s. It's like 63, 64, 65. And it was 4% of our federal budget.
Holy shit.
So yeah, and now it's like 0.2%.
Wow.
Just to think about, like, for a comparison. So this was a big deal, and this was like, it was a relatively, they were spending a lot, and they were making a big deal of it, and we were really trying to do this thing, and you're not really sure if it's gonna happen, right?
No, yeah.
A lot of people have died, and maybe it's gonna work. I mean, it's a crapshoot. It's really a crapshoot, and I think they do a good job of like talking about like there was a societal cost to this, there was an economic cost to this, there was a emotional cost to doing this.
Yeah.
And all those things have to be brought into play, but as a society, we decided we are going to do this thing. We're going to spend the money. We're going to spend the human capital. I mean, these people could have done all kinds of other things. We decided to send them to space and put them on the moon.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I obviously think it's justified. I'm kind of a space nerd or whatever.
Oh yeah.
But there was definitely thoughts at the time, and especially in the late 60s, things in big cities started to take a turn for the worse. Crime started going up, and we basically didn't know why. We didn't know why. We have better theories about it now, why it happened. But a lot of people are like, hey, our big cities like New York, they're in decay and people are leaving them in droves. Why don't we fix that instead of going to the moon?
Oh yeah, New York City used to be just like a shithole. Like, nobody wanted to live there. It was crime. There was gangs. There was very few safe places to live. It didn't have all the Hollywood people that want to live there now, or maybe you had your theater people, but even that was like, theater was still kind of not, I don't want to use like any kind of negative term, but it was kind of still bohemian. It was still very bohemian, I think. But yeah, it was some like Detroit shithole at that point.
God.
Not great.
The
auto industry wasn't probably what it was, and
it was dying. Yeah,
and I feel like it was a mass effect of just trauma, especially with Vietnam. People coming back, shell shock, PTSD, missing limbs. Like, again, I think we talked about this last week of, World War II veterans were welcome home, and they were sailors kissing nurses in Times Square. Hell yeah, sounds like a party. Not the same with Vietnam vets,
Yeah.
Especially when they even kind of throw that in a little bit in the movie with the chanting, LBJ, how many babies did you kill today? That was going on. There was no hope. Like, it felt like a very hopeless place.
Yeah.
And again, that's just like a massive, like, even now what's happening, we are going to see the after effects of major mass trauma. Like, on an emotional and psychological scale that a lot of people are not dealing with very well. I was in total denial at the beginning of April. I was in total denial of what was going on, and it was not healthy. And I think a lot of people were. And I feel like this comes in waves. And yeah, I feel like they just wanted to keep with it to maybe bring some hope to a very wounded America. I guess that's my long-winded I added all that.
No, I think that was good. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that was a bad time, right? The kind of late 60s, the Vietnam War is not going well.
On top of
There's
civil rights too.
yeah.
Oh my god.
Yes. And because in the late 68, everyone died basically. A whole bunch of people die. Kennedy is killed. I mean, when John F. Kennedy died, that destroyed the country. Honestly,
Well, it was like he was young, he was handsome, he was the president of the United States, dynastic family, good Irish Catholic boy, beautiful wife, perfect kids. When behind the scenes, he had a lot of issues. A lot of freaking issues. I mean, I know it's not like a great family or anything like that. I know they have some skeletons in that closet, and probably a lot of it's rumor and conjecture.
Well,
but I have a lot of sympathy for certain members of that family.
Yeah.
I have a lot of respect and sympathy for mostly the wives.
Yes.
And then they killed Bobby.
Yeah. It's just like how much can a country take, right?
Have you seen the video of it was filmed when Bobby told a crowd of people that Martin Luther King Jr. had been assassinated?
Yeah. That was a really important moment, and because he really made a difference in that, because people, I think they said every other city rioted except where he was when he gave that speech, because he connected on a human level with people.
He connected on a human level. He knew the man, and to a certain degree, and you just see how miserable he looks, and it's so awful. It's a good documentary I watched over the summer was Bobby Kennedy for President. Very good. It's just so sad.
Yeah,
it
I know.
gives you a good look into that time period and what was happening internally, externally, and just this. It's just all I can think of is that he was just such a sad person. Just the trauma again of a nation on your shoulders. It's like, and you're trying to make it better. You just want to make it better. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's such a tumultuous time period.
Yeah.
I mean, this is all the 60s. Like, if you look at where America was in like 1960 in comparison to 1969, I mean, it is a world apart. It is a world apart. I mean, 1960
movement.
Yeah. I mean, in 1960, we're still kind of in the cute, beautiful, 1950s.
Family.
Yeah. Everything's fine. We think the world is great. But little do you know that there are a lot of problems that are going to have to come to the surface with civil rights, with, the fact that we can't even protect the president. You can't even keep him from getting shot in the head.
No. It's not like he got shot once.
Multiple times.
He got shot multiple times from, I believe, multiple different people. That's just me. That's just physics or science or whatever. But I think there's a lot of conspiracy theories surrounding that. I always come back to the fact, no matter who shot him, no matter who was behind it, this was a public execution, and it was to make a point. This was to make a point. America, you are not safe. Public, out in the open, women and children are there. He's not even the only one who got shot. I thought it was. I think it was whatever's behind it, whatever you believe. The end result is this was to make a very serious point of many different things with a lot of different consequences. And have you ever seen the movie Jackie?
No, I haven't seen that yet. That's the Natalie Portman movie, right?
Yes, and it is.
I haven't seen that yet.
Outstanding.
I need to see it. Yeah, I might try and watch that. There's some good stuff about the Kennedys in different films.
I kind of wish they would just let him rest in peace at this point, but Jackie was one that I was just like, okay, I'll give it a go. I think that
that one had been in the works for a long time. I mean, she's a iconic American figure for sure.
Yeah.
On a lot of levels.
And she usually takes the back burner to most movies made about the Kennedys anyway.
Yeah, which is kind of fucked up, but
yeah,
you know.
It's unfortunate, but it's a very good film. Very good film.
Yeah. So again, that's the backdrop of people trying to land on the moon, right?
Like
the country has gone through one of its most tumultuous time periods in a long time.
It's
and
at
people
war.
Are trying to.
Yeah, it's at war with another country and itself.
Yeah.
And it's just wow. It's basically
yeah.
What's happening now in the recent months with everything going on. It's just like history repeats itself, dude. With a pandemic or a war, it repeats itself, and it's eerie.
Yeah. And so on top of this, so now we then come to the scene where they're, I don't know, were they doing a test or something? And then there's a fire in the cockpit because of an electrical malfunction. And the 3 pilots in that are all burned alive and die. Yeah. And so he gets a call on the phone, like he's at a party or something. He gets a call on the phone, and then, you know, they basically tell him, "Oh, you need to leave." I think he's in DC. He's like, "You need to leave DC now."
He's at the White House doing some kind of like press tour or something like that, trying to make NASA look good.
Meeting with Congress people, and you know. And again, that was another where there's more stuff like, oh, is this really worth it? Blah, blah, blah. It's cost so much money, blah, 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 blah. And yeah, he gets a phone call and he's like, I don't know how to tell you this, but there was an accident and 3 people died. And so you need to leave because we don't want you to talk to the press.
I think he would have had some seriously choice words if they had let him talk to the press. I think he would have definitely not been. I think he would have spoken with emotion, probably, than with his career in mind. I know. So I would have.
Yeah, right. So what'd you think of like Ryan Gosling's performance in this film?
Very good. Yeah. Very good. I think he's very good at playing quiet, shy types.
Stoic people. He's very stoic in this film.
He's very good at acting with little dialogue.
He's very expressive.
Very expressive. He's able to emote very well. I thought he had a very interesting voice for Neil Armstrong. I've heard Neil Armstrong's famous, one leap, speech before. So I know what his voice sounds like over a radio, but not how he sounds in a conversation or anything like that. But I like the voice choice that Ryan Gosling went with. I think he's a good actor, and he's very good at playing these very quiet, intelligent characters. And on the flip side of that, he can be very funny and play a very confident character as well. Not that his quiet characters aren't confident, but he's not showing off or anything like that. I love him in the film Drive. That was the film that made me really appreciate his acting, because before I was like, oh, he's just that guy from The Notebook. Whatever. I don't want. I've never seen it personally. It's just not my cup of tea. I know I probably like it, but I don't care. But no, I thought he was very good. I thought it was a well cast movie all the way around. People I recognize who, even if I don't know their names, I've seen their work and other things. I thought it was good.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Like his performance is strong, and he, there's a couple scenes. Like there's a scene at the beginning where, it's the funeral, and he kind of goes privately somewhere, and he's just crying. Mm-hmm. And just like I thought, and scenes like this scene here, and just the way that him and the director sort of show how he's bottling all this emotion in a way. And he's always trying to keep this really stoic, never flinches, never shows you that he's hurting. Kind of, I thought it was really, really amazing the way that he depicted him.
Because they keep trying to break him, like throughout the movie, with either death or an accident, or something goes wrong. They just, because he does snap at one point when he's on the phone and he looks down, he broke the glass. Like,
Yeah.
that's him internalizing everything.
Yeah.
And it comes out. And it's so tragic. It's just so sad. Like, I just feel so bad for him.
Yeah. It's a human being can only take so much, right?
I think when he does step off and get to the moon, it's kind of like, it was worth it, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then we get another scene where so his wife, Janet, she is just like at home, and then she sees her neighbor, right? Who she's been friends with this whole time. And her neighbor whose husband just died, she's kind of like shell shocked. Like it looked like she went shopping or something, and like her kids are inside the house, and she was like getting something out of the trunk, and she's just standing there and just not moving, not doing anything. And Janet kind of goes over and helps her out. But again, this is the emotional cost of doing this thing.
Yeah, like
right?
Janet, like Neil's still alive, but he's kind of turning into a shell of who she married. And her best friend is catatonic because her husband's dead, and that's an emotional labor. Like, she goes, you don't know what happens, but she brings her in the house. But when she goes back to her, she's chain smoking a cigarette because she just can't take it. Like, that's her emotional trauma coming out because she's on pins and needles. Like, ugh, God. Like, it's not fun worrying about the safety of your loved one. It's really not. Like, it's very true like that. It is. Especially when you don't want to appear like, oh, I'm just a crying housewife who's sad about her husband not coming home. It's like, no, the stakes are a little bit higher than that.
And so they do a really good job of juxtaposing this with, so there's a scene where Neil is sort of doing a test run on Earth of the lunar landing thing. I forget what it's called. But so basically their plan is they're going to have, so our rocket goes into orbit with the moon. They shoot off another rocket. And then that rocket lands on the moon. And then they have a lunar lander that's kind of going to hover. It's going to hover on the moon and then get them to their spot. So they're doing the test on Earth. And the test doesn't go great. You know, that's what happens. That's why you do tests.
Protecting him.
No.
Like, there's nothing protecting him. He has an ejection button he can press, and that's it. And that's if he hits it in time. And that's if he doesn't fly over the flames and get baked alive.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many ifs. That's if you hit it on time, if you don't get burned alive, and if you don't break your legs and your back while you're landing in a parachute over rough terrain.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah, and he gets injured. Like he gets injured in this, not like seriously or fatally, but he is injured in this.
It shakes him up.
Yeah, and there's this really interesting dialogue that he has with some of the the people that are overseeing him, like the NASA head kind of people, right? And they're like, and like you said, like he has the line, we have to fail down here so we don't fail up there. And they're like, oh well, but what at what cost? Like, what's the cost of doing it if something were to happen? And then he says, like, if you wanted to think about the cost, that was like a long time ago. We're too late for that. Mm-hmm. People are already dead. That's what we've gotten ourselves into. This is what we have to do.
This is where we're at now.
Yeah,
basically.
And so this is what you signed up for.
Yeah.
And then so the scene happened with Janet and the wife of the person who died. And so then he comes home, right?
Yep,
while she's chain smoking. He's got like basically a chunk of his head's kind of missing, is what it looks like. And he's like running around, and she's like, oh, what happened? What happened? I need to get this thing, and he's just not answering her, right? He's not answering her. He's emotionally distant.
Yep.
And then he's like, he just kind of leaves. He makes an
excuse, like, I got to go back to work or something. He changes his shirt and goes to work and just kind of leaves her there with more emotional baggage, because I think what happens a lot of time in relationships, if you don't talk about something that's bothering you, then you don't worry your partner. But we grow to know our partner so well that we know something's bothering them regardless. And it makes us worry even more. So that never helps. It never helps. Like, you come home with blood all over your face and you don't tell me why. And then you leave again later. That just makes me even more afraid of what's going on.
Yeah.
So it's his plan isn't working no matter what.
Yeah.
You know, he's hurting his wife, he's hurting his kids. And he doesn't realize that, because he thinks in his mind, if I'm detached, nobody gets hurt.
Yes, exactly. Like that's his coping mechanism, right? If I just sort of keep them distant, if I detach from it, if I just do my own thing, and he probably has to be fearing death at this point, right? He has to think. Yeah. He probably, you know, he's the type of person who he knows how likely it is that he's going to die. And, you know, it's probably in the 55% range. It's more than a coin flip, right? Mm-hmm. And so at that point, and he's just, you know, I mean, there's something also very selfless about that, right? Where you know that you're putting yourself at risk, but you keep doing it anyway because there's this greater good, there's this larger thing that you're a part of that needs you. The mission needed him. It needed his resolve and his intelligence and his ability to be able to handle these situations. I
think he's kind of accepted he's already dead in a way, especially after Ed White and Gus Grissom and the last guy, who, again, I'm so sorry, I don't remember his name, die. I think he just kind of, okay, I'm already dead. I'm just going to live as if I'm already dead, and that way it's easier, which is why I think he doesn't want to tell his kids, I'm probably not coming back. Yeah. It's easier not to acknowledge these things. Especially since it can happen so quickly. Like, I don't think the three men who died were going to space. It was literally a test. I think they were they were just testing something, and it happened. And it happened very quickly, and it happened suddenly, and nobody was expecting it, and least of all the three men who were in the capsule. And it's as shocking to the audience, because unless you know your history very well, if you're not just a viewer who doesn't know who these men were, then you don't know what's going to happen. I didn't think of what was going to happen until I saw the date. And it's just, and then the capsule just crushes, and that's it.
Yeah.
Like, it's so jarring, especially since you grow to love, like, Ed, because he's such a good friend. Mm-hmm. Ugh, God,
yeah,
it's sick. It makes me so sick. Like, in a sad way, you know, like, you're so sad, and you're like, oh, I just need, like, to hug my dog right now, or
yeah.
I'm glad it wasn't gratuitous or anything like that. I thought if you can show something like that and have it be tasteful, I think you did a good job as a filmmaker, and it was very appropriate, and I think it was very kind. Like, I think there's some filmmakers who would have gone overboard with it and probably would have made it terrible, and it just affects Neil in such a important way. Like, it fuels his resolve to continue what he's doing, but it just hurts him and his family in the long run too.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's an important part of the story. Because it's like, I mean, there's so many people that gave their lives to do this thing, right? And, you know, at every step, they don't know if they can accomplish it, but they keep putting all of themselves into it. And it's really, you know, it was an amazing, and it's really, like I said, like, our cell phone today has more computing power than what they sent these people into space with. So the thing that got them there was the people, the humans, the actual human beings that did it. So they're the ones who really were able to accomplish this thing, and it just shows you what a human can do.
Yep. Like,
just a human being with their intelligence and their resolve can accomplish these kinds of things. It's beyond the technology.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
a human being. It's
No,
incredible,
like,
really.
We think we're so crazy smart and intelligent with our iPads and our cell phones, and like that is all amazing and great. But look what these people did without it. Look what they did without it, with just a tin can and their own intelligence having to be sometimes maybe smarter than a computer.
Smarter than the computers of the time, for sure, basically.
Exactly. Kind of makes you wonder if, oh, well, should you rely on an intelligent human being to do this equation or the computer to do it? Like, I love stuff like that. Yeah.
So, going forward in the plot, so they resolve that issue with, well, I guess there's some underlying issues emotionally that are bubbling right between Neil and his wife, Janet. And I think later on they do another Gemini mission that's successful. And so they're basically, it's an Apollo mission. I'm sorry. And it's a go to the moon, pretty much.
Yep.
And so, the world's excited, but, is his wife excited? Are
the other wives excited?
Right?
I don't think so.
And then there's this interesting scene where so Janet's talking with one of their, I think it's their younger son, maybe, I forget. And she tells him oh, your dad's going to the moon. And then he says, okay, can I go outside and play? I thought that was hilarious. Again, they just don't.
Kids don't process the consequence. They're like, okay, he's going to come home for dinner, so I'm just going to go play outside.
Yeah.
Something like that.
They think he's dad, He'll be back. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I'm sure I've had some moments in my childhood where my parents told me something important and serious, and I was just kind of like, okay, how does it affect me now? You wish that you don't have those reactions, but you're a kid. You don't know any better.
Yeah, you're a kid. You're a kid, So then Neil is getting ready to leave, and so basically they're talking about, he's going to, even if he gets back, he's going to have to be gone for a month or so, pretty much.
Just get the quarantine.
Probably more than that. Yeah, he has to do 3 weeks of quarantine if he comes back. And, again, he's emotionally distant. He's packing, and she's like, are you going to say anything to us before you leave? And
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Motorcycle.
Yeah. So she's like, are you going to say anything to us before you leave? And he pretty much doesn't want to. He doesn't want to do it.
He doesn't want to have to deal with it.
Yeah, he doesn't want to have to deal with it. And she forces him to tell their kids that there is a distinct possibility that he will not make it back. And so they all sit down, and he gives it's really interesting the way that they play that scene, right? He talks to them, his kids, like he was talking to the press or something. He gives these very robotic, scientific answers. Oh, we expect that the mission will be a success. Mm-hmm. That's what he tells his kids.
Because at this point, he's been so detached, I don't think he knows how to talk to them. And I think it kind of bites him in the ass in that moment. And I think he realizes, oh, maybe I should have had something better to say. Because he's not prepared, because he was just planning on leaving. Yeah. And I love that she makes him do that. Because you need to be honest with your kids. Even if they're not going to understand in the moment, later on, hindsight is 20/20. Later on, they will remember why it was important. Dad had that conversation with us.
Yeah. And what I really found interesting too, so he goes through with it, and then Janet, his wife, is happy, okay, great,
you can go to bed now
you can go to bed now. So the younger kid hugs him, right? Mm-hmm. His older son shakes his hand.
I think that's very telling of the times. The time period. Your youngest is still young, you can still give him a hug. Your oldest, maybe shake his hand. It's very telling of the time period, I feel like.
I thought that told it all to me. The older son, he's been through this thing with his dad so much. He's gotten so much of the engineer speak that he's like his dad.
He's used to it, He's learned from what he's surrounded by. There's also a giant plane, I think. And another motorcycle. Sorry, 1 second.
It's
Okay.
It's all good.
Okay. Air Force Base.
Yeah.
The usual.
So yeah, that scene, I really like that scene with the kids, because I felt like that really juxtaposed what he's done, right? What he's done with the way that he's been emotionally absent, what effect that had on his own children. And I just thought that was really stark that his older son wouldn't even give him a hug, just shook his hand.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine doing that to my dad. If he could have died, I would have been very emotional. And both of them were not they were very emotional about it, right? Uh-huh. The younger son gave him a hug, and then he kind of went to bed.
It's like, okay, I'm gonna go to bed now.
Amazing, yeah. So he goes off, and this is it. They're going to the moon. And what I really liked is that they had them, the NASA guys, they read the speech that they prepared for Nixon in case they either died or didn't make it, mm-hmm. which was a real thing. And so it shows you they didn't even really think they were planning for the possibility that they were not going to make it.
Which I think is pretty realistic to do. I think that's smart of them to do. Don't plan on it being a success, because otherwise that's going to be really difficult to deal with. When they talk about how it'll be as if it was a funeral at sea or something like that. Mm-hmm. And to have that in your mind when you're going up there, there's a speech prepared if I die.
Yeah.
This is not a for sure thing.
Yeah. And so again, the stuff, the space stuff with the ships and everything, I thought it was really well done. It looked great. I thought they pulled it off really well. And so the launch is good. They're in space. They are, I think it's a couple days to the moon, right?
Yeah.
So they're getting to the moon. And then they have their approach to the moon, and they're going to do their disembark and land. And then we get to this really harrowing moment in the film where they're on the lander, and they pass over a crater, right?
Oh my god.
Not only do they pass over a crater, but they're running out of fuel.
I think they pass over it with 3% fuel or something
that.
3%
left. And Neil is really, I mean, again, if it wasn't him, if it was someone with lesser skill who wasn't really prepared for this moment, they could have fallen into the crater, and that's it.
That's it. We wouldn't have had a moon landing. There was a lot of things working against them, but then again, it was also a combination of the right people and the right timing that made it successful. And Buzz is sweating. Buzz is really sweating in that capsule, and alarms are going off. They're like, "What's A1201 mean?" And they're like, "I don't know." And Command is like, "Yeah, we're working on that." And then they're like, "What's A1202?" It's two separate alarm goes off, and they have no idea what it means. And I don't even think Command gets back to them with an answer in time. But just land it, and he's like, "Gotta get over this crater. I gotta get over this crater." And he's just so focused. He even narrows his vision to the other side of it, and he still has to land. That's the thing. He can get over the crater, but he still has to land.
Yeah, you have to pass this crater and then land. And I really liked the way that they directed this scene, and the way that they showed all of because there's this small little pane where you can see outside. And again, space is a place where human beings are not meant to be. It's very dark. It's very cold. It's a vacuum. And you can it feels scary. It feels unsafe. And I think they really got that across really well in the scene. And like, it is super dangerous, and it is very easy for things to go terribly wrong.
Oh yeah, one little screw comes loose in that tinfoil capsule, you're screwed. Like, you're screwed, man. If that wasn't bolted in or welded just right, boom, you're dead.
Yeah. But so Neil pulls it off. Like, with barely any fuel left, Neil pulls it off, and the Eagle has landed, and they did it. And then, and then he's on the moon, and I thought that was a really beautiful scene.
Oh yeah, I was really emotional. I felt so proud.
Yeah,
it was this weird sense of like pride in him that he was able to accomplish that. I was feeling so many different things, and I think they used the actual voice recording of the guy who was guiding them, kind of a thing. It's like, oh, we have a lot of blue faces down here now. We can all breathe, kind of a thing. Like, that makes it feel more natural too, that they use the real voice. And when he's on the ladder, and like, I love when they look down, they're strapping each other into the suits, and they're like, "This is it.
This is it."
This is it.
And he leaves that footprint, and says, "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," which is, again, they use the archival version of that, and there's a lot of other archival footage that they use.
It sounded like a very good, again, the sound mixing in this movie was phenomenal.
It was amazing.
I could hear Ryan Gosling's voice, but I could also hear Neil Armstrong's voice, and I wasn't sure if they overlapped it or anything like that, or if it was actually just the recording of Neil Armstrong, but it was a nice piano.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
I know, you're fine. But it was a beautiful moment. I love that you couldn't see their faces. You just saw like
I love that.
Stars.
I love that. Yeah.
Because
the reflection in their helmet was just beautiful.
I still felt plenty of emotion, and I still felt in the moment without seeing some pretty actor's face or something like that. And I like that. I love that touch. It was so well done. I felt like it felt more real.
Yeah, I love that part of the scene, and they do put an emotional sort of button on it. When he took up the bracelet of his daughter who passed away, and he leaves it there.
Yeah, he lets her go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he finally kind of is able to emotionally move on.
Well, what is the most emotionally
it's amazing.
A distant place, not on Earth, that you could leave something behind. It's the vacuum of space where it's just vast, and she can go and be out there as Stardust. It's a beautiful thing. You don't have to look too hard to find the metaphor in it. And it's kind of because you only really see him interact with his daughter. You see the emotional toll it takes on his wife, but he's the one holding her. He's the one telling her stories, and he's the one on the phone with people telling them, "Oh, we're trying to find a doctor in Canada or somewhere." And he's the one who hasn't really let her go.
Yes.
And it's a beautiful scene. It really is. It choked me up. I don't know if it actually happened in real life that way or however it happened, but I thought it was a nice little ending to that subplot of him not being able to get over it.
Because it creates an emotional thing for this kind of very kind of hard sciencey type of mission, right? Yeah, exactly. He's still a person, even though he's kind of giving these very kind of robotic answers to stuff. He's still a person who feels emotion, and we get an emotional payoff with that scene. The mission's a success. They get there and they get back alive.
Yeah, that's the getting back part too. Hey, we made it, but are we going to get back?
Yeah.
I love seeing them bounce. I don't know, when he's watching, I think he's watching Buzz bounce on the moon or something that. He's watching him, and even though, again, you can't see his face, you can imagine he's probably smiling. I think he's smiling. There's just this giddiness, I feel like that surrounds it. Because I love when he's like almost hesitant to step off the ladder. Because this is Earth. It's still a conduit to Earth. But it's like leaving the womb almost, you know. He's gotta venture. He's gotta step on the moon.
Yes.
It's beautiful.
I mean, and no one knows what it would be like to be on another celestial body, right? You have you can theorize, but no one knows.
And it's just, the moon is scary looking.
Yeah.
It's not. Yeah. It doesn't look like Fun World or Splash Town or something. Not at all. Like it's a terrifying looking place. It's barren.
Yeah.
It's desolate. It's dark. It's gray. Like, it's not this exotic. It's not freaking Ryza in Star Trek, the Pleasure Planet. It's scary. It's a horror movie setting.
It's scary. It is really, really scary. It's really scary. But yeah, they go where no man has gone before, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and so then they do the mission, they succeed, they do all the stuff, they get back home, they get back to Earth, everyone's celebrating, everyone's happy. On the planet, they said like hundreds of millions of people watched the moon landing. Hundreds of millions, which is, I mean, it's probably a very large percentage of humans on the planet at the time.
All over the world.
Yeah. And so, you know, Neil has to be in quarantine for 3 weeks. Something we can all kind of empathize with. Yeah, if only we could have quarantined for 3 weeks, right?
If only it had been that short of a time.
Yeah, and so Neil and his wife, they kind of have a moment at the end. Which, you know, it's so interesting because, like, there's this glass between them. And so there's sort of this physical barrier, and I don't know, it just feels like a good analogy for how
their relationship.
Yeah. It feels like a good analogy, and they don't speak at all, right?
No. I don't know. I feel like I heard that he had been married more than once, so I think this is probably his first marriage, and I think when knowing that, it's kind of a closing of a chapter, maybe. I mean, I don't know what happened with their relationship after that, how long they were together, etc. But knowing that they do end up getting divorced, it's kind of I still love you, but this is really, really hard.
Yeah.
I love you, but damn. Let's not do this again.
Yeah. And you know what's great? There's a scene in the film where Janet's talking to the wife of, I forget the guy who dies in the fire.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Oh yeah, I married him because I wanted a quiet life or a simple life or whatever." Mm-hmm. This is not what she got. No. Not at all. Which you know, it's just another thing. It's like she probably doesn't even want to do this thing, right?
No, because
she didn't sign up for this.
She married an engineer. She didn't think it was going to go to space. like, why would she ever have thought that? And again, it goes back to, like, sometimes, you know, one spouse will make a decision that will ultimately affect the entire relationship. But in the moment, you just think, oh, well, this is a really good opportunity. Well, good opportunities can turn frightening very quickly because you uproot your whole life and you change so much in a short period of time. And you have to figure out what you're kind of made of in a way. Is this a relationship I can withstand after? Because, he made it back all these times. But the next time and the next time after that, and more friends who die, and traumatizing my kids and traumatizing me. And
you can only, like I said, a human being can only take so much.
Yeah, and they portray that very well in the film.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was First Man. I liked the film a lot. I really, a lot of the stuff worked. I loved the stuff in space. I loved Ryan Gosling's performance. I really liked the directing, and I thought it just worked on a lot of levels for me. And I thought it did a good job of humanizing him, showing the cost of the human cost of doing this thing and creating, you could see it. I feel like there's a version of this story where it's very boring, very by the book. This didn't feel like that to me.
No, because it felt by the book, and I was very intrigued the entire time. Because again, there was plenty of things I learned that I didn't know beforehand. Obviously, a great deal of testing goes in. I didn't realize how many times we had freaking failed. Okay, like the crater. I didn't know he had to fly it over a freaking crater. That makes it even more harrowing, in my opinion. With that little fuel, and we read about it in a history book, or we learn about it in school, but they don't really talk about the human loss, how it affects the human spirit and can change you ultimately as a person, because he was not the same person he went into that as he was when he came out. Mm-hmm. And not only that, just being a historic figure from that point on, and being considered a hero. Most people who get labeled a hero don't want to be a hero, because, well, I only have the status because someone died. If it had been somebody else, if he had been in that training test, if they had swapped teams, if he hadn't been a commander, X, Y, and Z, the course of history would have been totally different.
Yeah, totally. So I thought the film was really great. I don't know how you felt. Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was very, very good. It goes into that theme of a bunch of, really popular, handsome actors playing astronauts lately. So.
Yeah. So, so did you think the score and the sound mix was good for this one?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Again, they made space so terrifying with its noises, or lack thereof sometimes. Even the sounds of them getting strapped in, or the fly buzzing in the capsule at one point, the rhythmic spinning noise, even the actors breathing heavily, goddamn, it scared me, and I thought it was very good sound editing. Sorry.
Yeah, it was nominated for an Oscar for sound editing. It actually won for, I think it won for editing. It won an Oscar for editing. So, yeah, a lot of that's been... Oh, no, I'm sorry, for special effects. It won for special effects.
Well, just going back to the editing, the movie clips along very quickly. You do massive time jumps at some points, and it felt more like vignettes than scenes. It felt like its own little stories here and there, rather than a continuation of one scene or something like that. Maybe that sounds weird, but it didn't feel more like short stories in between everything.
Yeah. All these individual kind of missions are their own story. Exactly. Their own story about, yeah.
But
mixed in with, and the familial drama and the, just the fact that there's this emotional toll, right, that it takes on everybody.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah. So, do you have any last thoughts on the film?
Watch it.
Yeah. Watch this film.
It's one of the better biopics that's out there. I feel like sometimes biopics pander to whoever they're being told about. Generally because maybe that person's still alive, or because they're so beloved for whatever they did. This one I think is very true. It paints him in a positive light because of his intelligence and his talent, but it paints him in a negative light because he was emotionally distant when he didn't have to be, when it could have actually benefited him more not to be. And he has a tremendous amount of regret. He had, like I said, that moment when he could have opened up to Ed about his daughter is just so heartbreaking, especially with what follows. And you can see that on his face when he gets that phone call. And the surprise, I think, is also very interesting because they know how dangerous it is, yet it's always a shock. You're never prepared, which is, I think, very true.
Yeah, I mean, you can never be prepared for something like that. Because then you think, oh man, is that going to happen to me? Am I next?
Exactly, and you can't have that mindset when you're doing these things. You have to have a clear head.
Mm-hmm. So I think we both recommend First Man. It's awesome. Watch it.
Absolutely. You will
Great
learn a
film.
lot. It's scientific. It's pretty accurate. It's a beautifully filmed movie. The special effects are fantastic. The acting performances are great, and it's very relatable. I think a lot of people could relate to it, even especially on the human element. Obviously, not on a astronaut level,
Yeah.
but unless you're an astronaut watching this, in which case, hey, have space.
Yeah.
We appreciate
Thank you for watching.
Yeah. Thank you for watching. We
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a relatable human story too.
And yeah, like we were saying at the beginning, there's some other films similar in the genre that I'd say that we also liked. I think we both like the Right Stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, that's a good one. I don't know if you've seen this movie. There's a documentary that came out last year, Apollo 11.
No, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I would recommend that. That's another good if you're into the NASA stuff. That was a really, really good documentary. I like that a lot. So yeah, I think those are our thoughts on the film. Both strong recommend it. And yeah, thanks a lot for coming by and listening to us talk about this film. And see you again next week. May the force be with you.
Live long and prosper.